So it's a new year. We've just gone through the holiday gauntlet. And since we're in the middle of winter, it's only fair that I would draw a coastal scene, warm and summery, far from all the snow and red-clothed bearded old men. Well, hello there, I'm Détroit. Let's start with the right way to start. Subscribe. Nah, I'm kidding. I meant to say that this drawing is inspired in style by the works of OBS Studio on Instagram. They are French artists with lots of marine-themed illustrations that are very pleasing to the eyes. Very not winter-like, but I've never been great at following trends, so that's alright. This drawing I'm making is a mix of an idea I've had a while back, coupled with a study of the style of OBS Studio. I'll be talking about this a little more in a minute. For now, let's go over the drawing prompt. This drawing, aptly named bigwaves1.psd, sorry, old habits die hard, bigwaves1.clip, since I'm using Clip Studio, of course. Well, this drawing represents big waves. I want to capture the moment when the ocean crashes along the shore and sends huge waves way too high in the sky. So with the goal of showing these great crashing waves, I needed to show the scale of it, and decided on a cliff. A cliff is great because there is no way to mess up the composition of a drawing depicting a cliff. The sharp edge of it always looks good, no matter the angle. But a cliff isn't enough. What's close to the shore and tall enough that I can use to show the height even more? Yes, a lighthouse. I like lighthouses. I've drawn a few of them. I like how they look, their shape, there's something mystical about them. Anyway, having big thick waves reach as high as a lighthouse on top of a cliff, that ought to do it to show the scale. Other elements to add to our composition include a small house at the base of the lighthouse, clouds in the sky, birds in the typical V shape flying far away, rocks on the cliff, and a couple kites for good luck. Nothing weird, nothing fancy, no giant octopus tentacles mixed in with the waves. What? Nothing. As I mentioned at the top of the video, here I'm trying to learn from the style of OBS Studio. It's always so much fun to study the style of an artist I really enjoy. I find it more fun than studying the old masters or something. It's also easier considering you can find Procreate time-lapses and stuff on Instagram, so you understand their process better. This time, like every time I study somebody's style, I'm not trying to emulate their work completely. I'm trying to achieve the same vibe, but I don't really care if the work I make can pass for one of theirs or not. Like, let me rephrase that. There are specific things I'm looking for in what I learn, so I'm not interested in copying fully. Here I want to study the art style of OBS, especially in the way they draw the waves, and the use of gradients in shading. Like, I love the way they tend to make things flow into one another, but that wouldn't work that well with the drawing idea I had in mind, so I won't look into that aspect of their style. References and study work best like that. Picking up what feels best and most useful instead of trying to cram all the knowledge and skill at once into every single piece of art. Anyway, I talk a lot about that and how I use references and studies in this video if you're interested. Because this was partly a study and because I'm still getting used to Clip Studio, the process for making this illustration is a bit all over the place. Between the changes of colors, the addition of gradients, then removed, then added again, using hard edges, then softening them, and finally going back to the previous type of shading, it's a mess. I think it started to look good once I added the first bits of white lines. I don't know how to call them, they're only part of the detail, really. On a screen layer style, I traced tiny thin white lines all over the place. First the waves, then everything else. They break the organic flow of shapes into something more geometrical and tie everything together. The white lines emphasize the spiral shape of the waves, for example, and they soften the hard edges of the cliff by making it more flowy. I would say, if I'm being honest, the tiny white lines are like 85% of this style. Granted, the shading and stuff is more complex than you imagine at first glance, but just having these lines is enough to already add texture and give a similar vibe. Talking about texture, the more I draw, the more I realize I tend to make illustrations rather flat. I should learn how to texture things more efficiently. especially using digital softwares like I do. It should be a breeze, but I never think about textures. Even adding the texture of paper to a digital illustration sells it instantaneously sometimes. Adding a couple layers of paint strokes, I guess painting in the flats with the texture brush instead of using the fill tool would already make major changes. I don't know, I'm trying to work it out in my mind right as I'm telling you this. It's a bit late to implement that in the big waves drawing, considering I finished it a month ago, but in a future artwork I'll try some variations of texture. Let me know if you would be interested in a video about it, to learn about it along with me. So yeah, subscribe if it would interest you so you can see my future works. Now, about the colors. The more I draw, the more I realize I'm also bad at implementing color schemes in my illustrations. Like, I would say, modestly, I know a lot about color theory, but I'm not great at using my knowledge practically in that aspect. I'm a bit rough when it comes to it. Like, looking at the illustrations from OBS Studio, there are so many variations of the same color, usually blue, with only a couple % changes in saturation or brightness. It's the kind of slight variation that I see in artworks, but I don't think of doing it. When I'm drawing, I'm too afraid that the variation won't be seen, when obviously it can be seen. So another point I need to work on. I should restrict myself to simpler color schemes, just like I ended up doing at the end of this illustration process. The colors were too messy between the blue of the sea, the sky, the pink of the lighthouse and the green of the grassy cliff. So I removed the green entirely, made it an orange/pink and blue combo. And we are now reaching the end of the process. To make the whole thing more peaceful and like a postal card, I decided to add a white border to the edges. In retrospect, I should have planned for it since the beginning, because changing the size of a full artwork with a few dozens of layers is a bit harder. It's more taxing on the software side of things. If you want a quick tip to hide a white border, simply use the rectangle selection tool to select everything except the edges, then you invert the selection, and then you fill it with white. Do that on the topmost layer and that's it, you have a white border. I think I've said most of what I wanted to say about this illustration. A big thanks one more to OBS Studio, whose illustrations I genuinely love. Their Instagram page is linked in the description, but you know who else's links are? Mine! Yes, that's right, you can find all my work on Instagram at g3_sd. On Twitter it's at D3, and basically everywhere else. On Kara, Reddit, even Twitch where I stream sometimes. But the best way to support me is to like this video, and to leave a comment telling me what you want to see me draw next. And of course to subscribe to this channel and check out future videos. I'll see you soon. Happy New Year to you all. Bye!